For centuries, the Zarian Empire believed humans were nothing but soft diplomats who loved talking more than fighting, a species that preferred singing over screaming, peace over war, negotiation over violence, and because every alien species repeated the same idea, humans are reasonable, humans avoid conflict, humans are emotional. The Zarian Empire built its entire war plan on one simple assumption. Humans would surrender without a fight. But this assumption shattered the moment their massive invasion fleet entered the Titan outpost region of the solar border, because instead of frightened human diplomats trying to negotiate, instead of Earth ships rushing to defend, instead of military fleets scrambling to respond, there was only silence. A silence so deep and so unsettling that the Zarian commanders began to wonder if the humans already evacuated in fear. Yet the silence wasn't fear, it was preparation. And the Empire learned that too late. Because when their scanners finally detected movement coming from Earth, it wasn't the expected fleet of soldiers or trained officers or diplomatic envoys. It was something else, something the galaxy had never seen, something Earth itself had tried to hide for centuries. A special unit born from the darkest corners of human psychology, trained under oceans, conditioned in labs, sharpened through simulations that no other species would dare attempt. A unit designed not for diplomacy, not for ordinary war, but for moments. When humanity faced extinction and needed weapons that did not feel pain, fear, hesitation, or guilt, and when the Zarian invasion fleet arrived, Earth made one terrifying decision. Don't send soldiers, send the ones who don't break. The Zarian fleet laughed when they detected human dropships leaving orbit. They laughed because they expected trembling hands, shaky voices, and emotional speeches, but the laughter died the moment the human dropships hit the surface of Titan outpost with surgical precision. The doors sliding open in cold silence, and instead of normal human soldiers rushing out with fear in their eyes, the Empire saw something they were never prepared for. Rows of humans walking calmly through the dust. Expressionless, breathing evenly, faces blank like machines wearing human skin, eyes colder than ice, eyes that didn't blink under gunfire, eyes that didn't reflect fear or anger or excitement, only stillness. A dangerous stillness that belonged not to peacekeepers but to predators. And the Zarian commanders felt a strange chill when they realized these humans did not walk like soldiers. They walked like people who had been waiting for violence their whole lives. These were the humans Earth never talked about. The humans Earth never let the galaxy meet. The humans Earth locked away and trained in secret under the classified program known only to a few Terran leaders. Humanity called them many names in secret files, the quiet ones, the null minds, the controlled storms, but the most accurate name, the one whispered by scientists who studied them, was simple: psychopaths, not in the chaotic, wild sense the galaxy imagined, but carefully selected individuals whose brains lacked fear, guilt, emotional hesitation or the instinct to retreat. Individuals who did not flinch at violence, who did not freeze under threat, who could walk into gunfire like it was rain and perform calculations while explosions shook the ground. Individuals trained not to destroy uncontrolled but to destroy with precision, silence, and unstoppable focus. And these humans had one job: activate only when Earth faced extinction-level threats. The Zarian Empire, unaware of this nightmare, believed the humans walking out were some elite unit of Earth soldiers, but the more they watched, the more fear entered their hearts, because a normal soldier breathes fast when preparing to fight. But these humans breathed slow and steady like monks meditating. A normal soldier scans the battlefield nervously, but these humans stared straight at the Zarian lines without blinking, their posture unnervingly calm, their steps too controlled, their movements too synchronized, and the Zarian generals felt dread as they whispered among themselves. These cannot be regular soldiers. What did Earth send? Yet the answer came painfully late, because moments after the first humans stepped forward, something in the air changed, a pressure the Zarians had never felt, a terrifying energy spreading through the battlefield, not from weapons or machines but from the humans themselves, who stood silently like statues carved from an ancient, violent memory. The Zarian Empire, proud and arrogant, ordered their troops to fire. Confident humans would panic, drop to the ground, and beg for mercy, but instead, the humans walked into the gunfire without flinching, without slowing, without raising shields, each plasma bolt hitting their advanced armor and sliding off like sparks against stone. And the Zarian soldiers froze because the humans didn't even react, their faces still blank, their eyes still dead. And then, with terrifying precision, they attacked. The first human moved faster than any Zarian had ever seen, closing 50 meters in 2 seconds, tearing through a steel barrier with bare hands, ripping a Zarian walker from its legs like tearing a toy apart, and the rest of the Null Squad followed, moving like a silent storm, every motion calculated, every kill efficient, no shouting, no battle cries, no wasted movement, only cold execution. And the Zarians realized in horror that these humans were not fighting. They were cleaning, like surgeons removing infection. The Zarian commanders screamed for reinforcements, but the battlefield collapsed faster than they could react, because the Null Squad wasn't fighting an army. They were dismantling it, piece by piece, target by target, moving through ships, cannons, and defensive lines with terrifying ease, and in only 47 seconds, the Zarian Empire lost 9 ships, hundreds of soldiers, and all courage they once possessed. What frightened them most wasn't the destruction. It was the humans' faces, emotionless even as they caused chaos, their cold eyes scanning for the next target with a disturbing calm, their breathing unchanged even after killing entire squads, as if violence was a routine, a normal task, something they were born to do, trained to perfect, and unleashed only for moments like this. And when the Zarian commanders, shaking with disbelief, watched the footage again, they finally understood the terrifying message humanity sent without words. Humans are peaceful, until you force them to send the ones who aren't. The galaxy had always feared human emotions, but now they saw the truth. They should have feared the humans who had none, because Earth didn't send soldiers to defend Titan Outpost. They sent the nightmares they tried to keep hidden from the universe, and as the smoke rose from the burning Zarian ships and the Null Squad stood silently among the ruins, waiting for their next command with blank faces and dead eyes, the galaxy realized a horrifying truth. It wasn't Earth declaring war. It was Earth ending it. And this was only the beginning. Across the shattered silence of the solar frontier, where burning Zarian wreckage floated like broken teeth around Titan Outpost, the truth about Earth's terrifying response began to unfold, and as the Null Squad stood motionless near the ruins, silent, calm, breathing slow as if they had just finished a normal exercise instead of annihilating an entire enemy fleet, the Zarian survivors watching from distant scanners felt a bone-deep fear they had never known before, because this level of human efficiency, this dead-eyed calm, this lack of hesitation didn't come from normal training. It came from something else, something darker buried deep within human civilization, something no alien species had ever been allowed to see. While panicked messages flew through Zarian space, Earth remained silent, not sending reinforcements, not broadcasting threats, not celebrating victory. Everything felt disturbingly controlled, like Earth had expected this invasion, prepared for it, studied it, and positioned its nightmare unit perfectly. But the Council of Earth was not celebrating. They were afraid too, but not of the Zarian Empire. They were afraid of the unit they had just unleashed, the same unit they had kept hidden beneath oceans, deserts, and abandoned research stations, locked behind steel doors and walls so thick that even high-powered lasers couldn't melt them. A unit Earth always feared might one day become uncontrollable if left outside its cage for too long. The truth was simple. Earth never wanted to use the Null Squad. They were humanity's last option, the final line, the weapon so dangerous it was meant only for extinction-level threats. And while the galaxy believed humans were emotional and soft, Earth scientists knew a darker truth. Inside humanity existed individuals whose emotions didn't work like everyone else's, humans whose brains processed fear as excitement, danger as stimulation, conflict as clarity, humans who felt nothing during violence and everything after silence, people who were born with minds too sharp, too cold, too detached to ever fit into normal society. For decades, Earth feared these individuals, tried to understand them, tried to help them lead normal lives, but then something changed. Humanity realized the galaxy was not peaceful. It was hungry, ruthless, predatory, and if the galaxy ever turned against Earth, they would need a weapon the rest of the universe had never seen. So the Earth Council created Project Harbinger, a program hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean in a giant black facility known only by a number, Deep Station 9, where selected individuals underwent psychological conditioning that balanced them on the thin line between control and chaos, teaching them total calm under fire, absolute silence under threat, perfect focus under pressure. The Null Squad weren't created. They were discovered, recruited, refined. People who never felt fear became weapons who never felt doubt. People who never panicked became soldiers who never hesitated. People who didn't break became shields that didn't move. Their minds became sharper, colder, more stable in war than any alien species could imagine. They became instruments of pure precision, not sadistic monsters but controlled storms. Humans without emotional hesitation. Humans who could run calculations in the middle of battle. Humans trained to neutralize enemies without anger, without mercy, without guilt. Earth didn't celebrate their existence. Earth feared it. So they locked them away, hoping they would never be used. But the Zarian Empire forced Earth's hand. When the invasion fleet crossed the border, Earth activated the Null Protocol, a cold emergency order that hadn't been used in centuries. Inside Deep Station 9, alarms blared for the first time in decades. The Null Squad, who had spent years in silent training rotations, opened their eyes, calm and ready, as if they had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. Their handlers felt dread, because the Null Squad didn't sprint to war. They walked, silent and steady, like machines following an unavoidable future. When the dropships launched, Earth's generals felt a weight in their chests. They knew exactly what would happen, exactly what the galaxy would see, exactly how fear would spread. But they also knew there was no other choice. The Zarian Empire wouldn't negotiate. They wanted conquest. They wanted war. But they didn't know what war with humanity really meant. They didn't know that behind humanity's soft smiles, calm voices, and diplomatic behavior existed a locked door, and behind that door lived the Null Squad. The dangerous minds Earth kept hidden to protect not just themselves, but the galaxy. As the battle footage spread through the Zarian military channels, humans walking through plasma fire without blinking, tearing open armored mechs, dismantling assault squads in seconds, panic rippled through entire star systems. Zarian politicians froze in their chambers. Generals stared at the screens with sweat dripping down their necks. Commanders began arguing, shouting, begging for explanations that didn't exist. Their entire cultural belief collapsed in minutes. Aliens always thought humans were emotional because humans laughed, cried, panicked, and felt deeply. They never realized that these emotions were the very chains humanity used to keep their darker potential locked away. And the Zarian Empire had just broken those chains. Meanwhile, inside Earth's command chamber, leaders watched the same footage with a different kind of fear. Not fear of the Zarians, but fear of themselves. Because every second the Null Squad remained active increased the risk of them becoming harder to control. Their minds were balanced on a razor edge, brilliant and dangerous, obedient yet unpredictable. Earth didn't fear losing to the Zarians. Earth feared losing control of the weapon they had just unleashed. But they couldn't recall them, not yet. The Empire was still preparing a second wave. And as the Null Squad stood silently on the ruins of Titan Outpost, scanning the dark sky with emotionless eyes, waiting for their next target like wolves standing in an empty forest, Earth knew this war was far from over. Because the Zarian Empire hadn't understood the warning. They thought humans were monsters. They hadn't realized the truth yet. Humans weren't monsters. They were the shield keeping far worse monsters in check. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when that shield was pushed too far. Across the Zarian Empire, where pride once stood tall like unshakable stone towers, fear now moved like a silent disease spreading through every ship, every command center, every palace corridor. Because the reports arriving from Titan Outpost carried a truth too horrifying for the Zarian mind to accept. The Empire hadn't faced human soldiers. They hadn't faced human officers, they hadn't even faced human elites. They had faced something else entirely, something humans themselves kept hidden, something Earth never allowed the galaxy to know, and the moment the commanders reviewed the battle footage, the same sentence kept repeating across every communication line. They don't fight like soldiers, they fight like something else. The Zarian generals replayed the footage in slow motion, but slowing it down made everything worse, because the humans moved with a cold precision that didn't belong to biological creatures. Their eyes scanning targets like machines calculating numbers, their posture relaxed even under heavy fire, their hands steady even while tearing through metal armor, their faces blank while surrounded by chaos. And as the generals watched one human crush a Zarian exosuit with bare hands, they felt something they had never felt before, shame, because they realized the Empire's entire belief system was built on lies. Humans were not emotionally weak, humans were emotionally disciplined, and the moment those emotions turned off, something terrifying awakened inside them. Emergency meetings erupted across the Zarian capital, generals shouting that the Null Squad must be using forbidden cybernetic upgrades, admirals insisting it was drug enhancement, scientists arguing it was impossible for humans to evolve this way. But every explanation shattered when they zoomed in on the faces. No cybernetic implants, no glowing veins, no artificial pupils, nothing mechanical, just human flesh, human eyes, human bone structure, and that made the fear worse, because if this was natural human capability, if this was what humans became when they stripped away hesitation, then every species in the galaxy had misunderstood humanity for centuries, and now they were paying the price. Zarian soldiers refused to go near the front lines, entire battalions refused deployment, elite commanders resigned from duty, mothers pulled their children indoors, priests lit ancient protection rituals that hadn't been used in generations, and all of it because of 8 humans standing quietly on a ruined moon. The Empire's fear wasn't logical, it was biological. Something about the way the Null Squad moved activated primal terror in every watcher, as if every Zarian instinct screamed that these humans were apex predators disguised as calm figures. Meanwhile, the Zarian Emperor tried to maintain order, but every time he asked for a battle report, the answer grew worse. Communication towers offline, ships refusing to respond, officers frozen by fear, troops panicking at the mere mention of Null Squad. And the Emperor's advisors begged him to retreat. But retreat was impossible because the Zarian Empire had expanded too far, too arrogantly, believing themselves untouchable. And now Earth was reminding them of a truth older than empires. Never provoke a species that survived its own darkness. As news traveled across the Empire, civilians gathered in fear, staring at the skies, expecting the humans to invade next. But the terror deepened when they realized the humans weren't invading. They weren't attacking at all. They were simply standing still, staring into the void, waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for a signal? Waiting for orders? Or waiting for more Zarian soldiers to make the mistake of approaching them? That uncertainty crushed morale more than any weapon could. Across research sectors, scientists started analyzing the behavior of the Null Squad, trying to understand how humans could operate without visible emotional response. And the more they studied, the more horrifying the possibility grew. What if humanity didn't create these soldiers? What if these humans were always present within humanity, hidden under layers of emotion, empathy, laughter, weakness, normality, waiting for a reason to awaken? And this theory spread like fire until even the Emperor started believing that humans were not weak. They were intentionally hiding their true nature, and when the Zarian Empire forced war upon them, Earth simply unlocked the part of humanity the galaxy never wanted to see. Meanwhile, back on Titan Outpost, the Null Squad remained motionless, their weapons lowered, their heads tilted slightly as if listening to something distant, something no alien could hear, and when satellite scans analyzed their biological signatures, the Zarian researchers gasped. These humans had no elevated heart rate, no stress spikes, no adrenaline surges, no signs of fear or anger. Their bodies were functioning as if they were sitting quietly in a peaceful garden instead of standing among burning wreckage and crushed war machines, and this discovery caused entire research teams to collapse into panic because it confirmed the truth. These humans did not feel war the way others did. War calmed them. Violence stabilized them. Threats sharpened them. They were the kind of humans Earth kept hidden for a reason. And while the Empire struggled to process this truth, other alien species secretly began watching the footage too, stunned and terrified, realizing that the Zarian Empire had awakened something the rest of the galaxy had never prepared for, a version of humanity without restraints. Diplomats whispered that humans were the most dangerous species not because of their violence, but because of their emotional depth, because their emotions kept their worst instincts chained. But now the chain had been broken, and the galaxy trembled as the Zarians tried to decide what to do next. Negotiate, retreat, surrender, or prepare another attack. But before any decision could be made, the Zarian Empire made its final fatal mistake. They tried to spy on the Null Squad. A stealth drone approached Titan Outpost, invisible to most sensors, but the moment it entered the airspace, every member of the Null Squad turned their heads in perfect synchronization, their cold eyes staring directly at the drone, sensing it not through sight, not through sound, but through something deeper, some instinct or training the Zarians couldn't comprehend. And before the drone could retreat, one human simply raised their hand, pointed at it, and the drone detonated mid-air. No beam, no projectile, no visible tech, just raw intention and explosion. That footage broke the Empire's spirit for good. Generals collapsed. Soldiers fled their posts. Scientists refused to continue evaluations. The Emperor himself whispered in fear, "What has Earth created?" But Earth had created nothing. The Zarian Empire had revealed it. And as the Null Squad stood among the ruins, waiting silently for the next wave, the galaxy realized the truth too late. Humans did not start this war. But the Zarians had awakened the version of humanity that would finish it. Across the fractured Zarian command network, where static replaced confidence and fear replaced arrogance, the decision was finally made to contact the humans, not to negotiate peace, not to demand surrender, but simply to understand what kind of nightmare had stepped onto the battlefield. Because nothing in the Empire's long history prepared them for 8 calm humans dismantling thousands of trained soldiers in less than a minute, and as the Zarian High Council gathered in their war chamber, their faces pale and trembling, they hesitated for the first time in centuries, too afraid to speak, too afraid to move, too afraid to open the channel that could bring the very monsters they feared into direct communication. Yet they had no choice. If they didn't reach out now, the Empire might collapse without even being attacked again. Their communications officers activated the long-range holographic projector, voices cracking as they sent a message toward Titan Outpost, expecting no answer, expecting silence, expecting the cold unknown. But what answered was worse. The air inside the Zarian war chamber shifted as the transmission connected instantly, no delay, no interference, no encryption. Like the humans were already listening, already watching, already waiting for the Zarians to speak, and when the hologram began forming, the entire chamber fell silent as a tall figure materialized, its outline sharp and still, its presence cold enough to make every officer instinctively step back. It was a human. Or at least, something that looked human. The figure stood straight, armor black and gray with strange blue patterns glowing across the chest, each pulse matching the rhythm of a calm heartbeat, and its face, expressionless, emotionless, disturbingly calm, looked like a mask carved from silence itself. The Zarian Council froze because the eyes looking at them were not eyes of hate or fury. They were eyes that felt nothing at all, eyes that looked through them, not at them, eyes that analyzed without judgment, eyes that made every creature in the room feel small, exposed, and fragile. Before any general could speak, the hologram tilted its head slightly, almost curious, almost bored, and its voice came out smooth, steady, cold, like a surgeon about to perform a painful procedure without blinking. "You called," the human said, tone flat as a dead star. Those 2 words hit the council harder than any weapon. The Zarian Emperor, for the first time in his long rule, struggled to form a sentence. "We wish to understand what you are," he whispered. The human blinked once, slow and mechanical. "We are the Null Squad," it replied. "We respond when extinction is near." That sentence was a blade slicing through the room. Extinction. The Zarians had expected anger, maybe threats, maybe demands, but not cold acceptance of such a horrifying concept. A trembling general stepped forward, voice cracking. "Are you modified? Enhanced? Augmented?" The human shook its head calmly. No, the council fell silent again, their hearts beating hard. No enhancements. No cybernetics. No chemicals. Just pure humans. "Then how," the general whispered, "do you fight like that?" The hologram leaned slightly forward, and for a moment the entire chamber felt the temperature drop, as if death itself had stepped closer. "Because we were born wrong," the human said simply, "and trained to use it." The Zarians felt a sharp, primal terror they had never known, because this wasn't a monster made by science. This was a monster nature created, and Earth refined. Another counselor, sweating, forced himself to speak. "Why did Earth send you? Why not their military?" The human studied him with a long, quiet stare that made the alien feel naked. "Because war with you is not war," the human replied in a voice like quiet thunder. "It is cleanup." The council gasped, some in fear, some in outrage, but mostly in disbelief. To the humans, the Zarian Empire, one of the strongest military powers in the galaxy, was not an enemy, not a challenge, not even a threat, just a mess to clean. Before the council could recover, the human continued, voice lowering, becoming even colder. "You attacked Earth," it said. "That was not wise." One of the younger advisors shouted, "You are psychopaths. You are unstable. You are controlled." The human finished calmly. "Trained. Focused. Unleashed only when necessary. You forced this." The council chamber became painfully quiet. Every alien stared at the hologram with trembling fear. And then the human said something that made every soul in the room shiver. "You misunderstand us," the Null Squad member murmured. "We are not here to destroy you." The Zarian Emperor dared to breathe again. Relief flickered in his eyes, until the human continued. "We are here to end what you started," it said. "Quickly. Efficiently. Permanently." Any hope died instantly. The air felt too heavy to breathe. Generals felt dizzy. Council members whispered prayers. The Emperor's voice cracked as he asked, What are your terms?" For the first time, something that resembled a smile, a cold, empty, soulless curve of the lips, appeared on the human's face. "We do not negotiate," it said. "We execute." The hologram began dimming, the blue glow flickering like distant lightning, and the human spoke one last sentence before vanishing. "You wanted war. Now you have it. But not the one you prepared for." The moment the hologram disappeared, the entire Zarian command chamber erupted into chaos. Officers shouting, generals collapsing into chairs, advisors screaming to be evacuated, guards dropping their weapons from shaking hands, and the Emperor trembling so hard he could barely stand. Because now they understood. Earth didn't send soldiers. Earth didn't send warriors. Earth sent the one thing no empire in the galaxy was ever prepared to face. Humans without limits, humans without fear, humans who didn't need reasons to fight, only orders. And the Zarian Empire had just given them one. War across the galaxy, where millions watched the leaked footage of the Zarian Council's failed communication attempt. Fear spread like a silent plague, slipping into every home, every outpost, every hidden bunker. Because for the first time in recorded history, entire civilizations saw the truth about humans. The truth Earth had hidden for centuries. The truth the galaxy had mocked as rumor. The truth that now terrified every living species. Humans were peaceful by choice, not by nature, and when that choice was removed, something ancient and dangerous awakened inside them. Something the galaxy was never built to survive. The recordings of the Null Squad's calm faces, their dead eyes, their emotionless voices, their quiet statements delivered with surgical coldness played on millions of screens. And the more aliens watched, the more they realized something terrifying. There was no hatred in those human eyes, no excitement, no anger, only emptiness, a perfect void where emotion should have been. And this void frightened species more than violence ever could, because it meant the humans were not acting out of rage or revenge. They were acting out of purpose, clarity, calculation. And that made them unstoppable. Across Zarian cities, panic spread as civilians huddled in crowds, clutching their children tightly, staring at the giant public screens broadcasting the Null Squad's message on repeat. Shops closed. Military officers abandoned their posts. Even hardened criminals surrendered themselves because the idea of being outside when the Null Squad arrived was too much to bear. Entire regions declared curfews. Religious leaders began chanting ancient prayers, hoping their gods might protect them. But even the gods felt far away because fear of humans drowned everything else. And while the Empire fell apart internally, the rest of the galaxy watched with a mix of horror and fascination, realizing they had misunderstood humanity for centuries. The Council of Elders from the alien worlds whispered among themselves. Trembling, humans laughed to hide their darkness. The Jorith Dominion, known for their brutal military training, watched the Null Squad footage in silence before one commander exhaled and muttered, "We trained soldiers. Earth trained predators." Smaller species, once mocking humans for their emotions, now prayed those emotions never disappeared again. Because the moment humanity turned off compassion, they became something the galaxy could not comprehend. Meanwhile, in secret underground labs across different star systems, researchers tried to analyze the humans' behavior, pausing frames, scanning their movements, zooming into their expressions, hoping to find some weakness, some logical explanation, but every frame deepened the terror. Scientists noted how the humans did not blink during combat, how their pupils barely changed size even under bright weapon flashes, how their breathing remained stable even during rapid movement, how their muscles reacted faster than neurocommand signals should allow, how their faces remained blank even after executing lethal moves. And while researchers tried to convince themselves that humans must be enhanced with hidden tech, the truth contradicted them. There were no implants, no drugs, no cybernetic upgrades. Everything the Null Squad did came from pure human biology guided by extreme conditioning and a type of psychology no alien structure could imitate. The galaxy realized something darker. When humanity evolved on a violent world filled with predators, disease, natural disasters, and chaos, it shaped their minds in ways peaceful species could never understand. Humans had always carried this darkness. They just learned to hide it behind laughter, kindness, emotion, and diplomacy. And now the mask had slipped. The Zarian Empire began collapsing internally as thousands of soldiers deserted, crossing borders to neighboring species begging for asylum, crying that they did not want to fight the motionless humans. Zarian leaders tried to rally their troops, but every speech sounded hollow because fear already lived too deep. Military bases shut down because commanders refused to order their soldiers into a battle they believed no one could win. Even the Empire's elite warriors, once proud and ruthless, now trembled at the thought of standing before humans who didn't feel fear. One veteran told his commander, voice shaking, "I have fought monsters, but the humans, they are not monsters. They are storms wearing human skin." This statement spread through the Empire like a cursed whisper. Meanwhile, the Null Squad stood calmly on Titan Outpost, not moving, not speaking, waiting with a stillness that sent chills through every observer. They looked less like soldiers and more like statues placed at the gate of an ancient tomb, guarding something sacred yet deadly. Their armor reflected the dim light of ruined Zarian ships, their faces emotionless as they stared into the void, each of them scanning different directions without speaking. A silent communication born from training too deep for outsiders to understand. Satellite drones observing them began malfunctioning, crashing into the surface as if the air around the Null Squad itself rejected surveillance. Alien scientists watching the footage realized this was not a glitch. It was pressure, psychological pressure generated by the humans' presence, their focused aura so intense that even automated systems cracked under it. The Zarian High Council tried to deny the truth, but the data screamed back at them. The Null Squad is dangerous by existence, not by action. The most terrifying moment came when the Zarian Empire intercepted a private transmission between two human commanders, not part of the Null Squad, but discussing them. The transmission was short, crackling through static, but the Empire heard every word. The Null Squad isn't deployed to win wars. They are deployed to end them. End them. Not fight. Not negotiate. End. That one word sent shockwaves across star systems, because no empire, not even the Zarian, had ever created a force with such a mission. And then finally, the galaxy learned the truth of all truths. A truth that changed how every species looked at humanity forever. It happened when an old, forgotten research file from Earth leaked into the galactic network. It described experiments on extreme human psychology, explaining how certain individuals reacted to threat, pain, fear, and moral conflict. The file had one chilling line highlighted in red: "Human empathy is our greatest strength, and our final defense against the monsters we could become." This sentence moved through the galaxy like a dark wind, and everyone understood its meaning. Humans had not evolved to be peaceful. They had evolved to hold back the part of themselves that could conquer the galaxy if unleashed. And now that part was awake. Now that part was walking on Titan Outpost. Now that part was staring at the Zarian Empire. And the Zarian Empire, once proud and arrogant, finally understood the nightmare they had unleashed. They had not provoked Earth. They had provoked the darkest version of humanity Earth tried to keep hidden from the universe. And the galaxy shivered knowing one terrifying truth. The Null Squad was only getting started. Across the Zarian Empire, where once the sound of marching soldiers and roaring starfighters filled every sky, now there was only silence, heavy, suffocating, terrifying silence, because the entire empire had reached its breaking point, its people trembling under the weight of a fear they didn't know how to fight, A fear that came not from monsters or aliens or invasions, but from 8 humans standing quietly on a distant outpost, 8 humans whose presence shook an empire larger than 50 civilizations combined. And as the Null Squad remained on Titan outpost like silent guardians of death, the Zarian Empire found itself collapsing from the inside faster than any external attack could ever achieve. Because fear of the unknown, fear of the human mind, fear of the unbreakable stillness radiating from the Null Squad had eaten away at the Empire's heart like acid burning through metal. Military bases that once housed thousands now stood half empty as soldiers deserted their posts, running into neighboring star systems, begging for refuge, trembling as they whispered the same horrifying words. You haven't seen their eyes. They don't care about dying. They don't care about killing. They don't care about anything. War factories shut down as engineers refused to build weapons they believed were useless against humans who walked through plasma fire like rain. Entire fleets were found drifting near the outer rim unmanned, abandoned by their terrified crews who escaped in shuttles before the Null Squad could arrive. Even the Empire's elite commanders, those who led victories across dozens of battlefronts, now sat alone in their quarters, shaking, replaying the footage of blank-faced humans tearing through armor and steel without emotion, asking themselves how any species could face something that lacked fear completely. In the Zarian capital, the Emperor held emergency sessions deep inside armored bunkers, surrounded by advisors who no longer spoke in confident tones but whispered like frightened children, their voices trembling as they analyzed every scrap of intelligence they could gather about the humans. But every time they tried to plan a counterattack, a new report arrived that shattered whatever courage they had left. The Null Squad moved again. Another outpost is gone. Our soldiers refused orders. Commanders resigned. The fleet in Sector 12 surrendered without firing a shot. The Emperor, once proud and feared, now looked like a man drowning in fear. His hands shook every time he touched a datapad. His eyes darted to the ceiling whenever he heard a noise, terrified that it might be the humans arriving. He tried to give speeches of strength, speeches of hope, speeches calling for unity, but none of them worked. Even he didn't believe his own words anymore. Meanwhile, the Null Squad advanced with terrifying calm, moving from Titan Outpost to Zarian Outpost Delta like a silent storm. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They didn't rush. They simply walked, cold, steady, emotionless, and everything in their path fell apart. Outposts collapsed before they even arrived. Ships self-destructed. Commanders evacuated without orders. Every step the Null Squad took echoed through the galaxy like a countdown to disaster, because each step carried a terrifying message: we are coming. Satellite feeds across hundreds of worlds captured the same chilling sight. 8 humans moving side by side, their armor marked by scratches of previous battles, their steps perfectly synchronized, their breathing measured and calm, their faces blank, their eyes sharp and scanning, and whenever alien children saw the footage, they hid behind their parents because even the young felt the cold dread humans radiated in silence. And then the most terrifying thing happened. The Null Squad did not kill everyone they encountered. They didn't slaughter civilians. They didn't burn cities. They didn't chase fleeing soldiers. They simply eliminated military resistance with surgical efficiency and moved on. That terrified the Empire even more, because it meant the Null Squad wasn't driven by rage or hatred. They were driven by mission. They weren't chaotic monsters. They were focused destruction. Controlled extinction. Across the galaxy, other empires watched with wide eyes and shaking hands as live broadcasts spread the scenes of Zarian defeat. Leaders from 10 star systems held private meetings, whispering fears they never thought they'd admit. What if humans send them after us one day? What if Earth decides we are threats too? What if this was always humanity's true face? Even the most powerful empires, those who claimed to be unshakable, felt the cold crawling under their skin, because every second of the footage showed something that broke galactic logic. Humans did not fight harder, they fought calmer. And calm was scarier than rage. Back on Zarian Prime, panic erupted in the streets. Civilians trampled each other trying to escape cities. Ships overloaded with refugees launched without permission. Officers abandoned strategic posts. Entire planetary militias surrendered without a single human arriving. But the deepest panic came when sensors picked up a small human vessel entering the Zarian system, Not a fleet, not a war armada, just one ship. One silent, small, unassuming transport. And inside it, the Null Squad. 8 humans approaching a capital world protected by 10,000 Zarian ships, 6 planetary shields, and surface cannons powerful enough to melt moons. But none of that mattered. Every Zarian soldier who saw the Null Squad's signature on their scanners suddenly felt their hands go numb. Their breathing turn shallow. Their legs shake uncontrollably as instinct screamed at them to flee. Some fainted before they could even engage. Others disabled their ships and surrendered immediately. A few fired out of pure terror, but their shots missed, their weapons trembling in their hands. The Zarian Empire, one of the galaxy's strongest forces, was collapsing because its soldiers were too afraid to fight. And as the Null Squad's ship drifted closer to Zarian Prime, moving with the same calm precision that had shattered 13 outposts already, the galaxy finally understood the truth behind humanity's peaceful reputation. Humans weren't peaceful because they were weak. Humans weren't peaceful because they feared war. Humans weren't peaceful because they lacked power. Humans were peaceful because they were hiding something the galaxy was never meant to see. Something that now walked across Zarian space like death wrapped in human skin. Something that didn't roar, didn't scream, didn't rage. It simply existed. The Null Squad. And the Zarian Empire's final defenses began failing one by one. Not because they were destroyed, but because everyone abandoned them the moment they realized Earth had not sent soldiers to negotiate peace. Earth had sent psychopaths trained for war the galaxy could not imagine. Earth had sent the storm the Zarians themselves had awakened. And as the Null Squad's ship began descending toward the capital, every civilization watching the broadcast felt the same cold truth settle into their hearts. This wasn't war anymore. This was judgment. Across the Zarian capital, where once the skies glowed with the Empire's golden banners and proud warships patrolled like guardians of glory, the atmosphere was now heavy with a fear so thick it felt like smoke pressing down on every heart. Because the Null Squad's small transport ship descended through the sky with a calmness that made the world itself tremble. A slow, steady descent like an executioner walking down an aisle of terrified prisoners. And while alarms blared across every city, citizens didn't run toward shelters. They fell to the ground, shaking, covering their ears as if trying to block out the crushing silence radiating from those 8 humans approaching their world. The Zarian High Council watched from the safety of their bunker, but even the bunker walls felt too thin, too fragile, too weak to keep out the cold dread blooming in their chests. And as the human ship pierced the planet's atmosphere without resistance, without fear, without even activating shields, the generals panicked, screaming for the planetary cannons to fire. But the cannon crews refused, shaking uncontrollably, their fingers frozen above the trigger, whispering, "If we fire, they will. Come for us first." Everything the Empire built, its armies, cannons, starfleet, pride, collapsed not under human firepower but under human presence. And then, at the exact moment the Null Squad's ship reached a hover above the central government plaza, every screen across the capital flickered violently, static swallowing broadcasts, news feeds dying mid-sentence, propaganda banners melting into distortion, until a single face replaced every transmission, every wall screen, every holographic display. A human commander from Earth, not part of the Null Squad, but someone whose authority weighed heavier than any emperor, someone whose gaze carried not cruelty but something far more terrifying, control. The galaxy had never seen this man before, but the moment his image appeared, even species living millions of light-years away felt their hearts brace for impact. He stood tall, posture perfect, jaw set like stone, eyes not cold like the Null Squad but sharp with purpose. A man who understood how dangerous his own people could be. A man who looked at the Zarian Empire the way a parent looks at a child who has made the final mistake. When he spoke, his voice was steady, calm, almost gentle. But that gentleness held a weight that crushed every listener's soul. "This is Earth Command," he began, no anger in his tone, no hatred, only an impossible authority shaped by centuries of peace guarded by unimaginable monsters. "We did not wish for this conflict. We asked for peace. We offered peace. We maintained peace." His eyes narrowed slightly, and it felt like the entire galaxy held its breath. "You forced our hand." Across the Zarian capital, citizens cried silently. Soldiers trembled. Commanders clenched their jaws to stop their teeth from chattering. And the human continued, voice tightening with something that sounded like tired pain rather than anger. The Null Squad is not our army. They are not our soldiers. They are not our warriors. He paused, letting the silence cut deeper. They are a warning. Gasps filled the planet. Even the Emperor stepped back in shock. A warning? Not a weapon? Not a frontline force? A warning of what? As if reading the galaxy's collective fear, the human commander continued. Humanity is peaceful by choice, not weakness. His voice grew quieter, heavier. Because inside us lives something the galaxy was never meant to see. The crowd froze. Command centers fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. The Null Squad exists so you understand that simple truth. If you force us into survival mode, you will not like the version of humanity that answers. Across millions of screens, the commander's face changed. Not anger, not threat, but a deep sorrow that humans rarely showed in war. We sent them so you would understand what we keep hidden, what we keep contained, what we keep restrained for the safety of everyone, including ourselves. His next words sent tremors through entire star clusters. You wanted a war with humanity, but you were not prepared for humanity without limits. Behind him, the image shifted to live footage of the Null Squad exiting their ship in the Zarian capital plaza. 8 humans stepping calmly onto the shining marble floor, their boots echoing softly, their eyes scanning the terrified crowd without a flicker of emotion, their movements so synchronized it felt like one consciousness divided into 8 bodies. The Zarians watching from the streets stumbled backward, some fainting, some dropping to their knees, not out of respect but out of instinctive submission to a predator they could not mentally fight. The human commander's voice lowered. You still do not understand what they are. He pointed to the footage behind him. They are not killers. They are not monsters. He leaned closer to the camera, eyes sharp enough to pierce the soul of an entire empire. They are humanity, without the parts that make us kind. That sentence shattered the Zarian Empire's last fragments of courage. A galaxy began crying. Entire planets whispered prayers. Children hid behind their parents. Veterans wept openly, because they finally understood what Earth feared, what Earth contained, what Earth sent to answer the Zarian challenge. Not humans at their weakest, but humans at their purest, humans stripped of empathy, stripped of fear, stripped of hesitation, leaving behind only instinct, intelligence, and precision. The most dangerous version of man. Then came the final message, broadcasted to the entire galaxy, a message that would rewrite interstellar politics forever. We are peaceful because we choose to be, the commander said softly. But if you force us to choose war, then we will stop choosing. Every planet felt that sentence in their bones. Every species felt it in their history. Every empire felt it in their future. The Zarian Empire awakened a side of humanity we hoped to never use again. And for that, consequences must be faced. His voice did not rise. It did not threaten. It simply ended the way a judge pronounces a sentence. This war ends now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. And with that, the message vanished, leaving the galaxy staring at the silent footage of the Null Squad advancing toward the Zarian High Council bunker. 8 humans walking with calm steps, emotionless eyes, and a presence so heavy that the ground itself seemed to shake beneath their feet. The galaxy realized with chilling clarity that the Zarian Empire could not escape what was coming. They could not negotiate. They could not surrender. They could not fight. Judgment was walking toward them in human skin, across Zarian Prime, where millions once walked proudly under the Empire's golden banners. The world now felt like a dying heart struggling for its last beat as the Null Squad approached the High Council bunker with slow, steady, emotionless footsteps that echoed like drums of execution. And every living soul on the planet felt their knees weaken because there was something horrifying about the silence surrounding those 8 humans, a silence so absolute that even the wind refused to blow, as if nature itself bowed before the arrival of Earth's darkest creation. And inside the bunker, the Zarian Emperor trembled violently while listening to the sound of each approaching step, his generals pale and shaking, some whispering prayers to forgotten gods, others simply breaking into tears because there was no strategy, no weapon, no shield that could stop the calm aura of death walking toward them. And above the ground, civilians watched. From every screen, every rooftop, every shelter, knowing they were witnessing the final moment of their empire. Not through explosions, not through fire, but through 8 emotionless humans moving like shadows wearing armor. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere grew colder as the Null Squad drew closer, their synchronized breathing somehow audible even through layers of reinforced alloy. Every inhale and exhale a terrifying reminder that these humans were not sweating, not panicked, not rushed. They were operating in pure focus, pure clarity, pure control, and the Emperor tried to speak to calm his council, but his throat felt sealed. His mind endless spinning between despair and disbelief, because never in the Empire's long history did a threat walk so quietly, so confidently, so unchallenged. And then the lights flickered. Screens froze. Security systems died. The entire bunker plunged into a dim red emergency glow that made every heart beat faster. The Emperor's voice cracked as he whispered, "They are here." And before his words finished, the reinforced blast door, designed to withstand planetary bombardment, began to bend inward, not through explosions, not through mechanical drills, but through pure force applied with slow, terrifying precision, metal warping like soft clay beneath invisible strength. And when the door finally fell to the floor with a shudder that shook the bunker, the Null Squad stepped inside. 8 humans. 8 blank faces. 8 dead, cold, unblinking eyes. No emotion. No hesitation. No mercy. The Zarian generals took involuntary steps back, chests rising and falling rapidly, claws shaking, eyes wide with primal terror. And even those who trained their entire lives for war felt their instincts collapse the moment the humans entered, because everything about the Null Squad felt wrong. Their stillness too unnatural, their presence too heavy, their minds too unreadable, their steps too quiet, their calm too deadly. One general tried to speak, but the words melted in his throat when one of the humans turned its head slightly, eyes locking onto him like a predator spotting prey, and the general's legs gave out as he collapsed to the floor, trembling uncontrollably. The Emperor stood frozen, unable to look away from the cold eyes staring into his soul, and the leader of the Null Squad stepped forward, not faster, not slower, just steady, like a machine following a pre-written command. When he spoke, his voice echoed softly through the bunker, calm as death itself. "You attacked Earth," he said, emotionless. "And Earth responded." The Emperor's lips quivered as he whispered, "Please, mercy." And that single word made every member of the Null Squad blink once. Simultaneously, unnervingly, like a single organism. "We do not do mercy," the human replied. "We do conclusions." The council fell to their knees, begging, crying, shaking, but the Null Squad didn't react, didn't move differently, didn't hesitate. They simply observed with cold analysis. One Zarian advisor tried to crawl away, but a human stepped in front of him effortlessly. No anger, no sound, simply blocking his escape with mechanical precision. The Emperor, tears dripping down his wrinkled face, bowed his head and whispered, why did Earth send you? Why not your soldiers?" The lead human tilted his head, as if studying a strange insect. "Because soldiers fight wars," he answered quietly. "We end them." The entire bunker shook as the human raised his hand, not to strike, not to kill, but to activate a small device on his wrist. A device so simple, so silent, yet so final that the Emperor felt his heart stop for a moment. A soft pulse spread through the room, a wave of invisible force, not destructive, not explosive, but absolute. Every weapon in the bunker deactivated. Every shield collapsed. Every escape route sealed. Every communication channel died. Every defense turned into dust. A quiet gasp went through the council. And then silence deeper than the void itself settled. Outside, across Zarian Prime, every citizen watching from screens saw the moment the Empire ended. Not through blood, but through stillness, when the Null Squad's signal pulsed out of the bunker, sending a calm, soft message across the galaxy. The Zarian Empire is finished. Billions of aliens gasped at the same time. There were no explosions, no battles, no firestorms. Just a single sentence ending an empire older than many civilizations. And then the most terrifying part happened. The Null Squad didn't kill the Emperor. They didn't slaughter the Council. They didn't burn the planet. They simply turned around, walked out of the bunker, boarded their ship, and flew away, silent, calm, finished. They did not care about ruling Zarian Prime. They did not care about the Empire's resources. They did not care about revenge. They finished their mission and left. That cold efficiency, that lack of cruelty, that lack of emotion, that perfect control, terrified the galaxy more than genocide ever could. Because destruction could be understood. Hatred could be predicted. Revenge could be reasoned with. But calm, emotionless completion of a mission? That was something no one knew how to defend against. As the Null Squad's ship disappeared into the void, the Zarian Empire collapsed completely. Soldiers laying down their weapons, civilians crying in the streets, leaders resigning, systems shutting down, and every culture on the planet whispering the same haunting truth. Earth did not destroy us, they simply ended us. Across the galaxy, the transmission from Earth Command replayed again, reminding every species what humanity had warned them. We are peaceful because we choose to be. But if you force us to stop choosing, then you will meet the version of us we protect the galaxy from. And that day, the galaxy prayed that Earth would never again need to send the psychopaths they had trained for extinction-level war. And deep in Earth's command centers, far beneath oceans and mountains, the Null Squad returned to the shadows, their faces blank, their footsteps silent, their minds empty, waiting, sleeping, resting. Not heroes. Not soldiers. Tools. Kept locked until the next time the galaxy made the mistake of awakening humanity's darkest strength. Because the universe now understood the final truth. Earth didn't win the war. Earth ended it. And the galaxy hoped they would never see those 8 humans ever again.